I loved in secret, not because I was ashamed, but because my world gave me no other choice. A woman of my standing, my name, my family. Love was not mine to claim openly, but I claimed it anyway, and it cost me everything. I was born at Burg Hülshoff in January 1797, when the moat froze and the stone walls held the cold. My name, Anna Elizabeth Franziska Adolphine Wilhelmine Louisa Maria, filled the family chronicle. But I was a quiet child, thin and often ill. The doctor's notes described a frail infant, feverish and coughing through the night. My mother hovered, whispering prayers and pressing cool hands to my forehead, fearing I would not survive the winter. I remember the taste of bitter medicine, the hush of footsteps in the halls, and the comfort of her presence in the dark. Life at Burg Hülshoff moved by rules as old as the stones. There was a way to sit, to speak, to pray. My brother and sister ran through the corridors, but I found solace in window seats and quiet corners. My mother's diary says I was happiest alone, and she was right. I listened to the wind in the trees, spun stories from shadows, and hid behind books when the parlor filled with visitors. My father wanted a daughter who charmed, who smiled and danced. I was pale and awkward, slipping away to the chapel where the candles flickered and silence was allowed. At 7, I wrote my first poem, copying each word onto thin vellum with trembling hands. I kept it hidden, afraid to share it. Poetry was not meant for girls like me, and yet the words came whenever I felt lonely or angry or small. They became my secret refuge, a place where I could be honest. Religion shaped my days. At 15, I knelt in the family chapel for confirmation, the catechism pressed into my hands. I tried to believe that obedience would bring peace, that following every rule would make me worthy of love, but I watched other girls rehearse their smiles and curtsies, dreaming of marriage, and knew I was different. My body was weak, my mind restless, my heart full of questions. I learned to keep my longings quiet, to hope quietly, to write quietly. Outside Burg Hülshoff, the world waited, but it was not made for a girl like me. At Bucherhof, the world softened for a season. The Haxthausen Manor was all creaking floors, garden shadows, and the scent of apples left too long on the grass. I was 22, still more girl than woman, too pale for dances, too quick to blush, always watching from the edge of the room. The young men from Göttingen and Münster came each summer, laughing over books and wine, their voices bright and careless. Among them was Heinrich Straube. He was not of our rank, his father a civil servant, his manners earnest, his eyes searching for kindness. I knew at once he did not belong here, and perhaps that is why I let my guard slip. We met first in the orchard, the evening sun tangled in the yew hedge. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my book. Heinrich spoke softly, asking about poetry, about the wildflowers pressed between my pages. He listened as if every word mattered. I had never known that before. At night, I replayed our conversation, word for word, until sleep finally took me. Our friendship grew in stolen moments, a glance across the supper table, a note slipped between hymnals in the chapel, laughter muffled behind the hedges. I wrote him verses, never signed, always hidden. He answered with letters folded into impossible shapes, sealed with pink thread. Sometimes I thought my heart would burst from the secrecy of it all. I pressed his words to my lips when no one was watching. I was afraid, but I was alive. The world outside the manor did not matter to me then. I let myself believe, for one trembling year, that I could be chosen, that my awkwardness and sickly body might be overlooked, that a plain girl could be loved for her words. But even in the first blush of happiness, I felt the weight of what could not be spoken. My family would never accept a match with a man beneath our station. My mother watched me with worried eyes. The servants whispered. I tried to be careful, to keep my joy folded small and secret, but longing is a dangerous thing. Sometimes I walked along the taxis wall, the yew hedge that marked the boundary between the gardens and the world beyond, and thought of the poem I would later write, Die Taxis Wand. I imagined the hedge as both shield and prison, keeping my desires hidden, but also trapping me inside them. Every letter, every poem, every glance was a risk. I told myself that love could be quiet, that it could survive in the dark. I was wrong. But in that first spring, I let myself hope. I never believed a secret could become so loud. It began with August von Arnswald, his smile so practiced, his words always circling, never landing. He called himself a friend, but friendship does not taste like poison. In the summer of 1820, he wrote letters behind my back, letters that twisted my name and my heart into something unrecognizable. I would not know the full shape of his betrayal until it was too late. One morning, the Paderborner Zeitung printed a rumor, a short line, but sharp as a blade. They called me a seductress, not by name, of course, but everyone in Westphalia could read between the lines. I was accused of luring Heinrich Straube, of bringing shame to my family, of stepping far outside the narrow path allowed to women like me. The words were not mine, but suddenly they clung to me like a second skin. Arnswald wrote in his memoir, years later, that he only meant to test my heart, to see if I would waver. But what he did was set fire to the dry grass around me. I watched as whispers grew into open talk, as neighbors and relatives signed a petition demanding my family prove our moral rectitude. My mother's face grew pinched and silent. My brother would not meet my eyes. Even the servants began to look away when I entered a room. I tried to hold myself still. I tried to believe that if I stayed quiet, if I prayed hard enough, the storm would pass. But the letter was out, the rumor was printed, and my place in the world, already so fragile, was swept away. I was not just unloved. I was unfit. I was a warning. I learned then that a woman's reputation is lighter than ash, that one careless hand can scatter it beyond recall. I did not fight. I did not speak. I gathered my things and prepared to disappear. Ruhehaus became my world for 18 years. The house sits at the edge of the moor, its white walls bright against the dark fields, but inside it is all shadows and hush. Each morning, I would walk the gravel paths with my mother and sister, the dew cold through my slippers, the air thick with the smell of peat. The rooms were small, the ceilings low. My writing desk faced the window, but the view never changed. Just the same bent willow, the same patch of stubborn grass. I kept my head down, my heart quieter still. Sometimes I wondered if I was already a ghost. I tried to make myself useful. I copied out household accounts, mended linens, sat through endless prayers. But when the house fell silent, I opened my notebook. I wrote in secret, as I had always done, hiding my verses between receipts and letters. The poems came slowly, as if the words themselves were afraid to be seen. I wrote about the moor, the rain, the ache of waiting for news that never came. I wrote about mirrors, about seeing a face that did not feel like my own. In 1838, I gathered my poems and sent them to the printer in Münster. The collection was small, printed without my name, paid for with borrowed money. Fewer than 50 copies found their way into the world. I told myself it did not matter, that I wrote only for God and for myself. But I still waited for a kind word, a sign that I was not invisible. 4 years later, I finished Das Spiegelbild. I remember the ink drying on the page, the sense that I had set down a piece of my own loneliness. The world outside Ruesch House moved on without me, but within those walls, I kept the flame of my voice alive, even as everything else grew quiet. In 1837, a young man named Levin Schücking entered my quiet world like a sudden burst of sunlight through clouded glass. He was barely 23, almost a child to my 40, and yet, when he spoke, I felt myself listening with a heart I thought had gone silent. Levin's hair was dark and unruly, his eyes too quick to judge, too quick to forgive. He came to Ruesch House with Wilhelm Junkman, both eager for poetry and debate. But it was Levin who lingered at my desk, who read my verses aloud, as if he could taste the salt of my loneliness in every line. He called my words the purest in Germany. I had never heard such praise, not from a man, not from anyone who mattered. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that a mind like his could see past my awkwardness, past the years of silence and shame. He read my poems back to me, his voice trembling with excitement, and for a moment, I almost recognized myself in his eyes. I remember the first time he handed me a letter, his handwriting slanted and urgent. "You are not only the greatest poet of our land, but the truest heart." I pressed the paper to my chest, afraid to answer, afraid to hope. I was still the woman who hid her feelings under layers of duty and prayer, still the one who believed she was too strange to be loved. Yet with Levin, the old ache returned, gentler this time, but alive. He was so young, so bold, so sure that words could heal what the world had broken. For the first time in years, I let myself imagine a life where my voice might be heard, where my heart might be seen. The world had not changed, but something inside me had begun to stir again. Meersburg opened itself to me in a way no other place had. The lake shimmered beneath the windows, blue as a promise, and the air tasted of grapes and riverstone. My sister Jenny and her husband Joseph von Lasberg welcomed me into their circle. And for a little while, I was not only tolerated, but cherished. The castle's old walls held laughter that did not belong to my childhood, and I let myself drift in it, lighter than I had ever been. We read aloud in the evenings, Joseph with his deep, steady voice, Jenny humming over her needlework, friends and cousins gathered close. Sometimes I forgot to be ashamed of my body, my cough, my strangeness. I walked the terraces with Jenny, our skirts brushing the thyme, and watched the sun melt into Lake Constance. It was here, in these gentle days, that the poems came easily. Heidebilder, I called them, sketches of the moor and the lake, the wildflowers and the wind. I wrote as if I belonged, as if I could finally claim a place in the world's story. No one asked me to hide my notebooks. Joseph read my verses and called them beautiful, not just clever. Jenny pressed my hand and told me she was proud. For the first time, I was not a burden or a warning. I was simply Annette, writing at a desk that looked out over water and sky. My heart felt almost whole. I let myself believe, just for a season, that happiness could last. I gathered these days into my poems, hoping to preserve their light against the shadows I knew would return. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can feel the warmth of those Meersburg afternoons and the quiet joy of being allowed, for once, to bloom. The letter arrived in the spring of 1843. I recognized Levin's hand before I broke the seal. The words inside were gentle, almost apologetic, telling me that he had wed Louise von Gaul. It was not a surprise. I had seen the change in his letters, less warmth, more distance, the careful tone of a man who is watched. Still, reading it felt like a door closing inside me. I pressed the page to my chest and tried to pray, but all I could do was weep. I had told myself that I was too old, too odd, too marked by illness for a young man's devotion. I had tried to keep my hopes small and hidden, but even a secret hope can die loudly. That night, I wrote the lines that became my farewell. Lebt wohl. I did not name him. I poured every ache, every silent goodbye into the poem, and when I finished, I felt emptied. I could not send it. There are wounds that must be wrapped in silence, even from the one who caused them. After that, I wrote less and less of love. The world had made its judgment, and I learned to live with the ache of it. I had spent most of my life moving from one borrowed room to another, always a guest in someone else's house, never quite at home. In the spring of 1843, I signed my name to a deed at last. The Fürstenhäusle, a small cottage perched above the lake with its tangled vines and crooked shutters, became mine. I paid for it myself, every thaler earned from my poems and from the manuscript of Die Judenbuche. For the first time, I owned something that could not be taken away by family or fate. No one could tell me when to leave, or how to arrange the furniture, or where to hide my notebooks. I chose a desk by the window, where the light falls across the paper and the air smells of grapes and earth. I was 46, unmarried, and no longer young. Most women of my world never signed their own deeds, never saw their names entered in the land registry. I did. I wrote to Levin that I had finally bought a roof for myself, a house that belonged to no one but me. In my will, I left the manuscript of Die Judenbuche to him, the only thing I had ever given away freely. The Fürstenhäusle was small, but it was enough. It was proof that I could choose solitude, that I could make a home out of my own longing and labor. I was still alone, but I was not powerless. This house, with its quiet rooms and wild garden, was the answer I gave to a world that had always tried to keep me silent. In 1847, the year Heinrich Straube died in Kassel, a lock of black hair was found among his things, tucked away, pressed flat by time. The family never proved whose it was, but the story lingers, fragile and persistent. I like to think it was mine, a small secret kept close when words and letters had vanished. It mattered more than any monument, meant for the hand that held it, not for the world's eyes. I died on May 24th, 1848, in a quiet room above the lake. The priest's name and parish seal marked the death certificate. My sister Jenny wrote the date in her careful hand. There was no crowd, no speeches, just the hush of a world moving on. Years later, my face appeared on the 20-mark banknote, issued from 1991 to 2001, passed from hand to hand across a country that once would not have spoken my name. Straube never saw it, but I imagine that lock of hair and my last breath in Meersburg as what truly remains, fragile, hidden, and impossible to erase. Even now, I hear the world whisper that some loves must remain unspoken. I still wonder if longing is a flaw, or simply proof I am alive. You may recognize this ache, the hush, the waiting, the hope that someone will see you truly and not turn away. My secret endures, not in shame, but as a quiet rebellion. Tell me, what do you hold in silence?